Okay. So, thank you for coming to my talk. The Docker talk was very interesting, so I appreciate you coming to hear me out. So, it was a few months ago. I was speaking at a conference in Istanbul with Jordi and Mikhail, and then after my talk, he comes up to me on stage and says, "That was a really awesome talk. Come to my conference and speak." And I'm like, maybe. What is your conference? What country is it in? So yeah, fast forward 2 months now, and here I am. So thank you for inviting me and for having me. So I think this is a very good conference to come to speak at, because other conferences, it's lots of different topics. You know, there could be some frameworks, it could be certain tools and technologies. So this conference I think is really good fit, because everybody here should be interested in frameworks, interested or using frameworks to some kind of level. And I hope everybody will have something to take away from this talk, and hopefully you could maybe change your mindset about using frameworks the way we're using them right now. And what PPI is doing is kind of like a psychological shift in the way that we're actually using frameworks today. So I'll just get into the details and it'll make more sense. So I have to do this swipey thing. Okay. And I have to look here. Okay, so hello. Nice to meet everyone. I'm from Scotland. I'm from the PHP Fig group and do some things on PHP core extensions, and I maintain the php.net website. I founded PPI many years ago. There was also a co-lead developer. His name is Vitor. So Vitor and myself, we spend the past few years working on PPI version 2, which is what we're seeing today. PPI version 1 existed for about 9 years. It was an actual framework, but as of 2000, it's evolved to become a framework engine, because that's how it's solving the problems. Been using PHP for some time. Not the only language I use, of course, but been doing PHP stuff for some time. So I've been working in hacking frameworks for some time now, since CodeIgniter happened. And then, if you want to take pictures or get in touch, email. Twitter's good. And if you want to email me after this talk, you can email me at php.net or ppi.io. So today, what is the message? What is the simplified message of what I'm trying to talk to you about today? And that's frameworks are powerful, but they do come at a cost. It's about understanding the costs that will help you get further by choosing and using frameworks. And the amount of cost is dictated by how you use and depend on your frameworks. All right. Today, I'm going to show you how to unleash not just the power of one framework, but many at the same time. And as a result, you'll see how that benefits you and everybody around you, right? Not just from a technical perspective, but from the business side also. Because there's a business side that make decisions sometimes and want to make changes, and that affects your jobs. And it can be quite frustrating, right? Or you'll make certain decisions based on certain things. So this is really going to help by... I've been doing this for years now, and other companies are, and they're giving very good feedback on this. So I hope you can take something. So I spoke about costs, right? And the costs are something called vendor lock-in, right? Which is technical debt. Is anybody familiar with this term? Or heard of this before? Okay. The idea is that you write your code, and your code's bound to that vendor, and you're locked in, right? Vendor being the framework itself, right? So this means that as a result, your application is tightly coupled to just one framework, or a framework that you're choosing. And that, as a result, it's hard to switch to a new framework or to share your code from application to application if they're using different frameworks. So that's what we've got today. These are the strains that I have had in the past and lots of other people are facing. So before we go in, people ask me, what's PPI? Well, it doesn't actually stand for anything. It's just a word that was invented many years ago. And but you can kind of make some fun things up. So we could try something. So we've got PHP interoperability framework. You can make up some creative things. But what is it really? It's not a framework. Many years ago, it was a framework. But as of 2010, it's the framework engine, all right? So that describes it better. It's a framework delivery engine specifically, and it delivers core parts of frameworks to your application, all right? And you will tell PPI what parts of what frameworks you want it to deliver to you, and it'll be delivered. But more specifically, it gives it to the individual features of your app and not your application. So right now, you're choosing a framework, and the part of that framework is being used across your application, right? The difference with PPI is that it's feature-driven, not application-driven, all right? And it takes a lot of similar concepts to the term microservices. Please raise your hand if you're familiar with what microservices are. Okay. So the idea of microservices from different communities, like Java and other communities, is they have not just an application with many features, but just like an application with one feature, and it's like it's hosted somewhere, right? And then they have multiple applications, which are just features. Whereas with what PPI brings to the PHP world is the idea of microservices, but they're not on different machines that have to communicate over the protocols. They're in memory, they're in the same application, but the design of the framework engine, they are decoupled by design, and they do not know what each other are using in terms of what frameworks are using. And that is the fundamental shift in using a framework or using PPI as just a container, and then you put whatever you like inside that, okay? So what can you use PPI as? It's just an engine that you can load up, or you can use it as a standalone application, which you're used to using right now. It's just, has browsers and controllers and things like that. Or you can use it inside its existing applications, like legacy apps, right? Does anybody here work in a company where they have a really old shit system and they wish it was better and you could use modern code? Does anybody have that situation? Yeah, me too, okay? So I use this in legacy apps. So I stop writing legacy code and I write new code that's the community are working with today, and I'm able to put that into legacy apps very easily. You can put it inside things like WordPress. I don't want to write WordPress code, but I want to have functionality that I can use in WordPress. Or things like Drupal, GoDigniter, whatever. It doesn't really matter. It's just something that you want to break away from if it's old, for example, right? So when would you want to use PPI? What projects or what scenarios would you find yourselves in that this would be of use to you? And here's one thing. It's a common, repeatable scenario that empowered me to build PPI for myself, and other people liked it so much they wanted me to open source it. So here I am. So here's something that hopefully that you will be able to relate to, which is step one: the customer kind of tells you what they want, or somebody comes in, your manager or boss tells you what they want, and then based on what that is, you will go and try to choose a relevant toolkit or framework that will accurately represent and give you something that you can build this in that suits that idea, this requirements that they've given you. So you go ahead and you start building it. This could be 1 week or 1 month or even 1 year. And then what happens next? Because someone comes along and changes their mind about what they want, all right? And you go create, you want to like punch something, right? So what happens at the moment is that the tool you chose in the beginning is no longer the most correct tool now because it's changed, right? But you can't go from A to B very easily because you've got a lot of technical debt, you've got a lot of vendor lock-in, and you want to break away, but you can't. So as a result, you can't switch, so you just stay where you are, right? Or you spend lots of time and money trying to get out of that to something new, right? So it's not your fault because you're not psychic and you cannot predict the future, all right? But you can prepare for it. And that's where PPI comes in. So PPI, from day one, it prepares you for change because it's designed for change. The design of the engine is a change engine, like an agile, prototyping, this type of stuff, right? So it's a design-ready engine. And how does it help you with change? First of all, the application code belongs to you, not your framework. The other way around now. And PPI lets you make framework decisions on a per feature, not a per app, like I was saying before. So it's very important to understand that. This means that when your features grow or evolve or change, you can change the parts of which frameworks you're using along with these things that change. So you're always synchronized. You're always matching the two together, all right? And therefore, you're in charge, not your framework. So this is a basic thing of choosing a framework. These are some characteristics or some traits of what a framework can have, and some things you might, based on these characteristics, you might choose a certain framework A or framework B, right, based on stuff that you need. So this is an example of Symfony, right? You've got high code quality, extensibility. It's not that simple. So you've always got that trade-off between simplicity and extensibility and code quality. So you're never really going to get both. This is Zend, so it's slightly different, but it's in the same area, right? Then you have Laravel, which is very different, okay? So you've got very simple, and it's got a strong ecosystem, but the code quality and extensibility is quite low. But that's intentional. That's their market, their entry level, right? CodeIgniter or Laravel, these Yi, speaking to Alex earlier on, he was saying that Yi is also used for entry level for beginners to get ready. So you're not going to start using Zend or Symfony, right? So what you're left with is just Falcon, for example, if you want speed, right? So as a characteristic, as a trait, why you would choose that framework over other frameworks. And you can compare them, right? So you can see, the pros and cons of each one. You would add Laravel to that. You can see where Laravel is good and bad, right? So you can be following with me so far. Then there's Falcon, and then the yellow is CodeIgniter. You get the point, right? There's all these frameworks. They have different characteristics. Which one do you choose, right? It's a very difficult question, because you could choose a different one in one day or 1 week or 1 year from now. So when you're building them in PPI, in PPI, you're choosing the frameworks based on your feature. So feature A is a back-end CMS. So it might need a very, it could be slow, but a very powerful and rich, extensible, customizable thing, parts of frameworks. Whereas on front ends, you just need to deliver content, right? So you want to choose a very different toolkit for that. Something that's very, like if you're getting lots of traffic, you might want to use Falcon for the router part, or you might want to use Nikita's fast router, or Aura, something very lightweight to easily scale your websites, right? Whereas on the back end, you can use larger, slower tools. So this is kind of where I'm going with this. So very, very quick recap. It lets you make framework decisions on a feature basis. So today, this is what we're using as in terms of frameworks, right? Many years ago, we had CodeIgniter as an example, and it was just a list of controllers. Right? And then what happened is we evolved as a community and said, we need modules or extensions or bundles or whatever. So then we created modules. But the mistake we made back then, many years ago, was that we recoupled all our modules back to the one stack. So we solved the problem here, but we didn't solve it here. And that's why we're getting these problems. Whereas in PPI, it looks like this. Okay? So the framework part is completely decoupled from each feature or module. Does this make sense so far? The parts you're using to deliver the functionality can be composed of different parts of different frameworks. Frameworks are no longer, and PPI frameworks are no longer a framework. They are components, right? So PPI lets you use frameworks and a component-based architecture to build up your system, all right? And if you want to change anything here, it's not going to change here, unless you write code that binds them together. That's obviously down to you. So technical stuff, all right? The engine itself, we didn't build it. We just reused parts of frameworks, parts of these two guys to create a very powerful engine. And this is most of this is in our composer JSON file. Thanks, Jordi. Some things are not there by default, and it's only when you add certain features like you need HTTP or you need routers that you will get these extra things, right? So when you include PPI into your project, you have an application or you've got a legacy app, you're just adding this line to your composer file. And you'll get the engine, the base, nothing more, just the basic. And then if you want to add templating, you would just add either line, or that line. Sorry for the people over here. Just, line 2, 3, or 4. If you want to start using templating. So you'll get more of the PHP ecosystem, but only when you want it. You're not going to get everything up front, because then everything would just be really slow, right? And that goes against the point. So, you want to do templating, you can do this. And it's not a PPI version of Twig, it's just Twig, or just Smarty, or just Mustache, or whatever you want, okay? It's not an abstraction. It's mediation. We take the raw form of what you use, and we send it over to Twig, for example. Twig will do its thing and send it right back. Okay? So all the knowledge that you already have and the experience that you've built up over time and using anything, in this example, templating engines, is 100% reusable because we do not do abstraction. It's mediation, so it's 100% the real thing. Okay? You're just giving responsibility back to PPI to say, please go and talk to Twig and do its stuff, and it'll bring it back. Routing, for example. So these are some examples. You can add these to your Composer JSON file, and then you will be able to just start writing, take code from your existing Symfony applications or existing Aura applications and just paste it in, and then it works. Okay. Databases. So we've got some thingy. We've got a data source module that just loads components very easily for you. It doesn't do anything much for you. It's just really just loading them. So if you want to begin using Doctrine ORM or Doctrine Debal or Laravel's Eloquent, you just include one line, and then you have it, and you can begin using that like you would use it in Laravel, but you're not actually locked into only Laravel. You can choose when you want Laravel and when you don't want it, right? I spend a lot of the PSR, the PHP Fig group, and PPI have the same goal. They have the same end goal. Okay, PPI achieves things using interoperability, and that's one of the key goals of the PHP Fig group. So in PPI, we build PSRs first. Well, not first, but in some cases, we build things ahead of time. And once they're working in PPI and have some experience of using it in production, then I take that back to the PHP Fig group and say, this works or this doesn't work, right? So it's a PSR-aware framework. And the more PSRs we add at parts of frameworks, then the easier it will be for things to be managed in PPI. And a lot of code, I can throw away a lot of my code, because my code I've been writing for years is to compensate against no PSRs. There's areas where PSRs do not exist, so I'm having to write code to glue them all together. But if a PSR comes out, then I can throw away all my code because PSR exists, right? So we're using these PSRs. This is in the framework, this is our request object. So it's a Symfony object that implements the PSR7 interface. So anywhere in the engine is PSR7 compliant HTTP. So any code that's out there already that complies with PSR7, you'll hear lots of talks, information on the internet about PSR7. And all of that code will work in PPI because it's an interface, all right? This is an example of a controller in PPI. It should look very familiar to you. If actions receive the request, PSR7 request object, you do your stuff, and then you might want to do some things and then return a PSR7 response object. So that's it. That's as easy as as simple as it gets. The router. So there is no PSR for a router, so I built one myself, and I will take that back to the PHP Fig group very soon, and I hope that, as a community we'll have a routing PSR as well. For now, it will only exist in PPI, not in the PHP Fig group. This is kind of what it looks like. I extended Symfony CMF chain router and used that model to build an interoperability routing thing. And all I need to do is add a very small wrapper around these guys, and they will just load in the actual routers themselves. So you can put, Nikita's fast router there, or Falcon router, or whatever. It doesn't matter. Your own company's router, if you like. And then feature A can use that, or feature B, or feature C can use different routers depending on what you're trying to achieve. Is this making sense so far? Good. All right. So for me, if I'm going to pick up, when I start writing code, I want to create a prototype or some kind of idea. I just quickly pull down the skeleton application, I type Vagrant up, and then I'm ready to start writing code. Okay? And I can use very simple, very easy to use parts of frameworks for templating or routing or other parts. And then if it has to evolve or mature, then I can start replacing these parts with bigger tools, right? So anyway, day one, I pulled in the skeleton app, Vagrant up, and then you see this. So you don't have to do any coding. It's just a Vagrant box. And you get congrats, whatever. And then there's a check script that we have taken, we have reused from Symfony and customized. So you can just run check.php, and you'll see this, and it will tell you things about your system, right? So it's quite useful. So this is something that I'm taking from Symfony and making available to anyone who wants to use it, whether they just want to do Laravel programming inside PPI. You're getting a lot from the Symfony world that would not be that easy to get if you were just using Laravel. So it's a good word here to describe this is called synergy. And the word synergy means the combination of two things coming together to create something much larger than they can achieve separately, okay? So in PPI, because we're combining things, we can deliver more than you could standalone, okay? Because you're combining things. Checker script. This is just the skeleton application. Doesn't need to be what your applications look like. It's just an example, right? You've got some config. You've got some master templates. I mean, that's it, right? The index. This is a configuration file. So this is what Zen Framework 2 looks like, very much. But this is, you don't need to do all of this. This is just what's coming with the skeleton application. But it's really just saying modules or whatever, right? The point is, it's just a very basic configuration. You can read up on the documentation. It's very, very simple. We have taken, in PPI we have a config component part of our system, and we're reusing parts of Symfony and allowing you to take all the powerful configuration strengths that you get from Symfony, but you can use them here. So you've got, it includes resources in the YAML files. You've got these things in here with the %, like these are called parameter bags. So you can take all of your configuration from Symfony and you can paste it in here, and it's compatible because it's Symfony, you're looking at it, right? So you can do straight up PHP. This is app.php. This is app.yaml. So our config thing just looks at the extension and loads the correct parser from Symfony, and you get all the goodies that you couldn't get before. So this is index.php. So this is like called the front controller. Cheers. So you get, Apache comes on and loads your file. So this is it. You can pass in some parameters to app. So really, the engine, the PPI engine, is just you do new PPI framework app, and then you just give it some config file, and then boot, and you're done. And then you can begin using all this. And if that's what you want, then you can use it inside the existing application. Or if it's using PPI as a standalone application to deliver web pages and stuff, then you can call run or dispatch, and it will do all the controllers and all that stuff. So you don't need to do all the. You can use it like a framework with like controllers and stuff, but it's not necessary. Okay, it's an engine. This is an example of a feature or a module in PPI. This is pretty much what Zen Framework 2 looks like, with a little bit of Symfony in there. But the point is that they only need one file, module.php at the very top. That's it. Zen Framework modules, one file, you're done. Okay. This is all extra stuff. If your feature, we went from 15 to 5. Okay. Anyway, as you can see, we've got some routes in here, basic examples, and we've got some templating things with extensions. So you can see PPI just detects what you're trying to do. You're telling PPI, I want Mustache, or I want Smarty, or I want Laravel routes, and it will just do it. Okay, you don't need to worry about that layer. You've got controllers. This is an example on the module class. This is how Zen Framework 2 can do service management, also known as dependency injection containers, all these things. But the idea is you've got a name of a service called Post Manager, and it does things, okay? So when you have PPI app and you call boot, you now have all the services from all your modules available to you to use in whatever context you like, whatever applications you like. So I can, and in terms of routing, from a module, I can just, every module has you can add a get routes module function, and you can call like one of these three and pass it your routes, for example, right? So that's how you do that. And this is what Symfony routes look like in Symfony, and it's the same in PPI, Laravel. You get the point. If you're using PPI in legacy applications or things like WordPress or whatever, again, you create a PPI app, you give it the config so it knows where your modules live, and then boot, and you're done. And you can return that back to whatever. And you'll have an object with a variable PPI app, and you can begin using it very powerfully, and you can use it as a dependency injection container to bring all your code together, or you can use it as full stack application. You can send HTTP at this object. In WordPress, this is just an example, not a real example, but it's just code I've taken from doing this in WordPress for many years. You know, WordPress is good, but you don't really want to do all your programming in WordPress because it's not that, the quality is quite low. So ideally for me, I do all my programming, you know, in a library or something with unit tests, and I can actually prove that it works, and then I can ingest it into something like WordPress or whatever. So as you can see, a WordPress function, and you get the PPI app object as a global because WordPress is like that, and you want globals. And as you can see, I just do get service post manager, and I've got that code from PPI, and then I can just do things with it. All right. So just one example. No time for live demo. So PPI is ready for you to build your projects in, and right now we have 2.1. We're not 2.0 is working very well. 2.1 is also in production, but we're not putting it stable yet because I've been speaking in many conferences this year, getting feedback from the community, getting ideas, wanting to talk to you and get your input, any suggestions, any feedback on how this could be done slightly differently before we say 2.1 stable. Okay? If there's any other frameworks that you like to use that are not in here, then as a community, I hope we can add them in here so we have as many adapters as possible so that you can just have a central point where you're doing your development, and you can just, as new frameworks come, you know, Laravel is quite new, so there will be another framework. You don't have to take all your code and rewrite it to work in the new Shiny framework. You can just, if the adapters are there in PPI, then one of your features can use the new Shiny framework, and the rest you don't have to touch to change them. So PPI prepares for change because it's designed for change from day 0 to day unlimited, whatever. And the whole point of this is, I hope by the time we're done and we've transitioned through the idea of interoperability and using PPI, to change the mindset of developers from this framework versus that framework wars. So yeah, so just to change them from this to this. That's it. Thank you. Yeah, Twitter's there, docs are there, and we chat on the Gitter channel. Of course, you can go to PPI website and press chat. It's like Slack, basically, and you can give your feedback or talk to us. Or if you're trying out PPI, you get some kind of error, you're trying to get started and you're stuck, then feel free to just come chat to us, and we'll help you get started, and looking forward to see what we can build with PPI. So, thanks. Questions?
Thank you for your speech. Thank you for the speech. It was wow for me. And you suggest to use PPI when I want to switch from one framework to another, and it's okay for me. But another way is to use different parts of different models from different frameworks. But what about code quality? It will be hard to support code that use several frameworks at all.
If I understand your question correctly, you're saying it'd be hard to manage code quality if you're using multiple frameworks. Yes. I'm not too sure how quality is related to what your tools you're using, so I don't get it yet. But it's up.
Okay. If you use WordPress and Symfony, you need to lower your quality to WordPress. Yeah. Well,
I don't think you're going to choose WordPress. I think somebody has chosen WordPress for you, and you're stuck with WordPress. But in terms of PPI, it can get you out of that hell that you're in, out of just writing all your code in WordPress, and you can write it in this area that can be consumed into WordPress. So you can be happy and write all your clean code and then achieve code quality there. And then you're just pulling it into PPI and just calling it. Did that answer your question? Maybe? We can talk more, no problem.
Okay, it's really rough and seems like a good idea to combine all good side of all frameworks. But how good must be your staff and knowledge in all of these frameworks for do really good apps and not code a framework Frankenstein?
Yeah. So, yeah. I think the question is: use the tools that make sense for your team and for your company and for your applications. And if you have people coming into your teams who are not experts at Symfony, but they have some experience in Laravel, they can be quite happy adding some Laravel bits and bobs to that feature, because the idea of better framework doesn't exist. A better framework for you is different from the better framework for you, because you're the guy writing the code. Frameworks are there so you can use them. If you're better at using Laravel than you are at Symfony, then Laravel is a better framework. But that's for you, right? It's about your team and your company and your project and what makes sense for you. But the point of PPI is you can choose now. It's you to make your own decisions and not the frameworks to make decisions for you.
And so about conflicts in code.
Conflicts?
Yeah, conflicts in structure or code of frameworks. So when we use different parts, we can get some conflicts in work and bugs.
Okay.
What about it?
So.
And we have 5 different models, and each model is using email component, but it was written by different teams, so we now have like 5 different email clients, and that becomes a Frankenstein monster of an app. Is it a good situation, and can PPI solve it?
I'm not sure. I guess we would have to look at the situation and say, okay, this is how you would solve that. For me, it's about removing the code from writing in frameworks, because PPI is not a framework, it's just that empty engine. So then you can write the code in the architecture so that you can achieve the quality that you want, and you're consuming frameworks rather than building code inside of them. So it's what makes sense for you, and you can choose when you want to rely on frameworks and when you want to build your own code and when you want to bring them together. Hi.
So as I understood, PPI is actually making wrappers around libraries which are already implemented. So the question is how to manage dependencies for those libraries. For example, I want to use Symfony 2.3, and when you were showing the example of including the Symfony router, there was no some stuff to choose between. So
between the versions?
Yeah.
So Jordi and I were speaking about this today. It's a PHP problem. It's not a tool problem. PHP is the language. It cannot be solved in the way the language is right now today. But I hope you can do it with things like JavaScript, the way the engine of JavaScript works differently. So you can do theoretically, if you were doing Symfony and JavaScript, you could do Symfony 2.3 and then Symfony 2.5, and they can live side by side in JavaScript. But in PHP, it's not possible to do that. So it's about careful consideration on what versions you use. Because Symfony, as an example, is using semantic versioning, there should not be any BC breaks on that chain that you're on. So 2.3 should be compatible with 2.4 and 2.5. So,
yeah, but for example, if you have 2.7 and 3.0, they are not.
They're majors. So the idea is they can make major breaks. It's something, of course, I'm well aware of, and trying to come up with creative ways to solve it. But it comes down to the language that we're writing in, and not something that I can really influence. But as soon as there is a way to do it, it'll be done. So,
okay.
Yeah, there's no real answer for that. We're bound by PHP and this guy resolving your dependencies. he's scared. He's like, don't talk to me. I'm not here.